In this video, we're going to talk about, should you move out of the family home? Now, I know this is always a concern for people. They're worried about being labeled as abandoning their family and all kinds of things. And a lot of times attorneys will tell you, don't leave the family home no matter what. And I'm not here to contradict any legal advice. I'm just going to help you kind of think through this and what some of the pros and cons might be and why your attorney may be worried about this particular issue or whether it may not be an issue at all. And how can you tell? Okay, I'm going to help you kind of think through this a little bit. Before we dive in, let me just remind you, if you like this content and you find it helpful, don't forget to hit like on this video. Also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. Family home, to move out or not to move out, that is the question, right? A lot of people fear being accused of abandonment, okay? And let me just tell you that I personally have never seen a court accuse a parent of abandonment of the family home just because they moved out. Okay. The simple act of vacating the home doesn't necessarily constitute abandonment. Generally, abandonment is when you leave and they don't hear from you and there's no, there's no contact, there's no support, there's no nothing, and you're gone and gone and gone and gone and gone. Okay. That is what abandonment is usually, what usually constitutes abandonment. Okay. In a situation where parties are divorcing and one person moves out, the act of moving out itself is not the issue. That's not really the part that your attorney is super concerned about. And if you're in a community property state, and not all states are community property, but if you're in a community property state in particular, you still own half the house. If you guys own the house and your name's on the deed, then you own half the house, and that characterization isn't really gonna change because you move out, right? It's not like suddenly I move out and I'm letting go of all my interest in the home. Well, no, I still have been helping make the payments and putting money into it and all those kinds of things. Okay. I don't think that's really the issue for most people. Most people are worried about, from a custody perspective, being accused of abandoning their family. So what you want to do is this. Okay. Number one, I can just tell you that one of the risks of staying in the family home, depending on the level of conflict that you have, is domestic violence. That is one of the things that can be really scary. And if that happens, that can really put you at a big disadvantage. And I've had several times in my late husband's cases where that actually did happen. Two people, two of the parents tried to continue to reside together while they were going through the process. And they ended up having some argument where the temperature just flipped on it. And they ended up having a domestic violence altercation. So that is, to me, one of the first things that you need to protect against, because that can really cause a lot of issues in your custody case. If you're the person being accused of it and you're found, guilty by the court of having committed domestic violence, it can put you at a huge disadvantage in the custody and all of that. So you have to think about that part of it. Beyond that, in the practicality, here's what happens. Okay. If you can move out and say to the other person, like I'll give you Thomas's situation, my late husband, when his ex-wife is the one that vacated the family home. And when she vacated, he said, well, you're not taking the children. And she said, well, yes, I am. And he said, no, we can do, week on, week off. Do you want this week or next? Okay. And they came to a verbal agreement on what their parenting schedule was going to be once she vacated. So she vacated, and then they both followed through on what they said. Despite the fact they had a lot of high conflict in their case, they did both follow through on what they had agreed to, and the children started going back and forth. So without a court order, without any of that, she moved out of the family home. They started doing a parenting plan. Okay. Now, by the same token, I've had clients who vacate the family home, and typically this is dad more often than it's mom. Not always, but more often. And dad kind of moves out, and my dads will kind of go, well, I'm going to let everything calm down. I'm going to let everybody just, everybody's really upset right now, and I'm just going to let things kind of calm down and it'll get better. And the kids will eventually want to go with me. Right now, they really don't. And and this is worse with older children. And so they leave and they think that eventually it's going to get better. And a lot of times it doesn't. And so I've had situations where I get a call from a dad who hasn't seen their child in a year or 2 years or whatever the case may be, because they left the family home, not with the intent of abandoning anyone, but with the intent of getting space so that we don't have conflict. But now nobody's filed. We don't have any court orders. I don't have anything I can enforce. And I've just kind of let all this time go by and I haven't seen the kid in a long time. And I've set up an unfavorable situation in the custody arrangement. Okay. So it's not so much about on custody. It's not so much about whether you move out or you don't or whatever. On custody, it's really about getting a parenting schedule in place. And sometimes people can't reach agreement on that. That's the other issue. And so this is why it's important to, maybe get into mediation. I'm a big fan of mediation, and you can get things done much, much faster that way. So I'm always a fan of that. If you can just get into mediation and get it resolved and decide, okay, who's going to move out, who's going to stay, what's the parenting schedule going to be, how are we going to start all this, that can create that space much faster a lot of times than going through the court. But this is an important thing to know, because if you go file a motion for the court to decide on custody, it's going to take time for you to even get in front of the court. Most places, I talk to people all over the US, in every single state. I've even got clients in other countries. And honestly, almost every court, it takes you anywhere from 30 to 60 days, depending on how backed up they are, to get in front of a judge on a custody issue if you're in disagreement. And sometimes then they'll send you to mediation if you haven't done that yet, and then have you come back, and then it's delayed even more. I say all that so that you know that, like, if you're living with somebody and you can feel the temperature rising and that conflict and that strain and stress in the household, and I know because I lived through this, if it's getting worse and worse and worse, then you're going to hit a tipping point probably. And if I said to you, look, if you go file tomorrow, you're looking at 30 to 60 days before you're going to have a court order, then you might go, oh, I need to get this started sooner rather than later. Because a lot of times what happens is we wait until that tension builds to sort of that breaking point. And then we're like, oh man, I can't take anymore. I'm going to go talk to an attorney. Well, then we go talk to an attorney, but again, takes time. The attorney can't just tomorrow be in front of a court. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, you can file an emergency motion and you can get in 24 hours and you can do all these things. And if you're letting the chatter around you of other people influence those types of things, you might be thinking that. But honestly, those types of motions, the court that's for emergencies. That's not for, oh, you waited too long and sat on your duff and now you don't like living with your ex, right? This is like, there's some emergency that there's life or limb generally with one of the children or whatever, as to why we need this urgent motion. Because courts don't like to hear things on an emergency basis. They want to hear it in a normal course so that the person filing the motion gets a chance to put their facts out. The person responding to the motion gets a chance to put their facts out. The court gets a chance to look at all of it, consider it, and then make their decision. Courts really don't like somebody coming in and wanting like this instantaneous decision about what's going on. Now they'll make that decision if they deem it's an emergency and they need to do that, then obviously they will. But I see a lot more people get denied on those types of emergency motions than I think most people think are going to be denied. Okay, so I think a much higher percentage are denied than people would think are denied. And so the court really does want to follow the normal course on things as much as they can. So if you're in a situation where the temperatures are already boiling, then you need to either be getting in front of a mediator or somebody that you can have a discussion about how you guys are going to handle this. If you move out, can you start a parenting plan? What can you do? Now, here's the other thing that I'll tell you about moving out. If you move out and the kids are in the family home with one spouse, or even if the kids go to the other spouse's house or whatever, and then one of the parents who are living in separate places at that point refuses to bring the children back or exchange them back, there you go. Now you've got a problem, right? Because you have no court orders. Now you're away from your kid. Now you're trying to say to the court, hey, I need an emergency order. And the court's going, well, your kids aren't in any emergency. They're in the house with their other parent, and this is how their life's been going the whole time. So there's no emergency here, right? I've seen that happen with a lot of people. And again, you need to talk to local counsel if you want to figure out, is your situation meet that criteria for that kind of filing or whatever. I'm not saying that yours does or doesn't. I'm saying I see a lot of people get this in their head, and then that's not how it plays out in reality, okay? So it's important to know these things and to think about it ahead of time, because once you've moved out, if the other parent withholds the children and you don't have any orders to fall back on, now you're scrambling, okay? And this is why attorneys will tell you, don't leave the family home until we have orders, okay? But again, I think you have to balance that with, are we at risk of domestic violence? Because that would be the absolute worst thing just about it that could happen in your case. And if you feel like you are, or it could trend that direction, you need to be going in to get court orders sooner rather than later. So I would encourage you to talk to somebody, again, locally about that issue. If you'd like more help in just learning about all these different perspectives and things to consider and what to think about as you're moving through this process, honestly, the sooner I get to people, the more impact that I can have in a positive direction. So I always say it's never too soon to reach out and start getting help on your case. If you'd like to do that, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's information on that page on how to enroll in my group coaching programs for moms and for dads. Or if you feel like you need a premium VIP one-on-one coaching services, that's usually for people who have custody evals, or they have attorney for the children, or they have some sort of domestic violence or protective order already in place. Those are generally what my one-on-one clients are looking for support with. Or sometimes they're just somebody that wants really that high level of hand-holding. So if that's you, there's information about that program on that page as well. So go over and check those out, and I will see you guys next time.